Yo, Sean Carter, Jay-Z himself, just got dragged through a decade-long paternity nightmare that finally exploded in federal court, and the fallout is nuclear. The billionaire mogul who controls everything just watched his cleanest secret get ripped open in public, and the man behind it ain't backing down. Not for money, not for fame, just for the truth. And Rymir really thought stepping into the ring with a billion-dollar empire was a smart idea. Bro picked the worst possible opponent and signed up for the fight of his life. Before we get into it, like, subscribe, don't miss it. Nah. Rymir Satterthwaite, the 30-year-old New Jersey man who's been claiming for years that he's Jay-Z's biological son, so his federal paternity lawsuit officially dismissed with prejudice by U.S. District Judge Sherilyn Peace Garnett. The dismissal dropped on November 4th, 2025 out of the Central District of California, killing Rymir's case for good. Rymir really thought he was gonna outlast a billionaire with infinite lawyers. That's a move of someone who's desperate. Now let's look at the receipts that show why this whole thing backfired. Alright, let's get into the quotes. This is where the words speak louder than any tabloid spin. In court documents filed in May 2025 in federal court in California, Rymir's legal team didn't hold back. They straight up accused Jay of running game on the courts, claiming Hall committed fraud upon multiple courts, misrepresented facts, interfered with procedural due process, and exploited legal systems in multiple jurisdictions to suppress plaintiff. When I read that filing, I was like, yo, that ain't no clout-chasing language. That's a man with paperwork. That's serious legal accusation territory. Then Jay's camp clapped back in their June 16 filing for News, and the lawyers came out swinging. The exact words from Carter's legal team. The fabricated allegations and claims have been addressed and rejected in multiple other courts, describing the suit as just the latest in what they call decades-long harassment. Bro said what? Decades-long harassment. That's the dumbest flex when you're a billionaire and you still won't just take the test to end it. When I heard this, I had to do a double take. Is Hall serious treating this like spam mail? Now jump to July 27th, 2025. Rymir hops on Instagram with a video update that broke the internet. He says, and I quote, "I did withdraw my case. It's for a reason. Yo, it's not 'cause I'm stopping with it. We got to step back and play chess, not checkers." Yo, chess not checkers? That's a line that made me sit up, because in the same video he said, "I have not stopped my fight." Man, that's not a man giving up. That's a man regrouping. But here's a receipt that really hit different. In Rymir's filing itself, his team painted Jay's behavior as a calculated cover-up, writing, "What began in the mid-1990s as defendant's music career soared to prominence quickly evolved into a scorched-earth effort to bury a personal truth, that he fathered a child with a 16-year-old girl who is now deceased." When I read scorched-earth effort to bury a personal truth, brew, that language is heavy. That ain't a child support filing. That's a war declaration. Then Rymir went on camera and said something even more powerful in his interview talking to the public. "I don't want no money or anything. I wasn't looking for none of that. I just want to know the truth." He kept hammering, "I work every day. I also have my own kid to take care of." Nah, that don't sound like a clout chaser to me. That sounds like a son who just wants closure. And when he said, "I'm going to fight until I'm not here no more," yo, that's not somebody bluffing. That's a man with nothing to lose. Finally, here's a kicker quote. Judge Sherilyn Peace Garnett's order said the court grants a motion and dismisses a complaint without leave to amend. Without leave to amend. That's legal speak for done. Closed. Forever. Jay's lawyers really cooked this thing with anti-slap statute, and that's where it gets wild. Now that we got the quotes, let's connect the dots. This timeline tells a story the headlines are missing. Roll it back to the start. June 2010. Wanda Satterthwaite, Rymir's mom, filed the first lawsuit in New Jersey trying to get child support out of Hov. That tossed out of court filing? Dismissed in August 2012. Not because it was meritless, but because it was filed in the wrong state. Wrong jurisdiction. That's a technicality, not a verdict. You didn't notice that detail, did you? Then 2014 happens. That refiled case came right after Lily Coley, Rymir's godmother, stepped in as legal guardian in 2011. Coley wasn't just some random family friend. She was a paralegal, a legal professional who knew the system, taking on a billionaire. That changes the whole game, and any smart person would have waited. But Hov's team treated her like an amateur, and that arrogance cost him later. Now check this timeline tightrope. One to pass away in 2016, before her son could ever get the answer she fought for. Rymir said his mother sat him down at 7 years old to tell him about Sean Carter. He grew up with that name echoing in his head. That trauma wasn't from Jay-Z. That was from a mother dying without ever getting closure. So when Rymir kept fighting, it wasn't about money. It was about honoring his mom. Then the May 2025 filing dropped right after a string of high-profile Jay-Z legal headaches, including the Tony Busby mess. The timing wasn't random. Coley filed in California federal court, not New Jersey, because she knew Jay's network and influence in NJ was a brick wall. So Hov's people did this 3 states away after Wanda already lost in Jersey. That's terrible jurisdiction selection by Rymir's team, but also smart strategic relocation. Either way, it shows both sides knew this was bigger than child support. And here's the part nobody's talking about. Rymir said in his interview he never wanted money. His filing only asked for reputational and emotional distress damages. So when Jay's lawyers called it harassment, they were framing a request for identity as a shakedown. That's when you know Jay's team is scared of the optics, not the lawsuit. The behind-the-scenes Coley angle is even crazier. She filed an adversary proceeding in bankruptcy court. A lien from the case allegedly cost her $25,000 when she sold her home and put another property at risk. This woman lost actual property fighting for a kid that ain't even biologically hers, allegedly. That ain't clout chasing. That's ride or die loyalty. And Hov's people really pushed her to bankruptcy. Brew. That's terrible PR. And they're about to find out. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Now check this out. Nobody's talking about it. Let's zoom into ONE's specific phrase from Rymir's filing. Scorched earth effort to bury a personal truth. That's not casual courtroom language. Fam. That phrase, scorched earth, is legal warfare terminology. Its use in cases where one side allegedly destroys evidence, intimidates witnesses, and abuses procedure. So Rymir's team wasn't just claiming Hov ignored him. They were accusing Jay of criminal-level obstruction. And Jay really didn't address that specific claim? That's a silence that speaks volumes. Now decode the word exploited in Rymir's filing. Exploited legal systems in multiple jurisdictions. Multiple jurisdictions. That's the key word. Not one, not two, multiple. Meaning Rymir's team is alleging Hov uses influence across state lines. If that's true, that's federal-level interference. And Jay really didn't catch how dangerous that allegation was? That's the problem with Hov. He doesn't read between the lines anymore. Zoom into the chestnut checkers metaphor. Rymir didn't just say, I'll be back. He picked chess. Why chess? Because chess is about positioning, about waiting for your opponent to overextend. He's literally telling us he's playing a long game. He withdrew ONE lawsuit, so the next move is harder to predict. If Jay's lawyers had half a brain, they would have noticed that specific word choice before celebrating the dismissal. Now this is a forensic bombshell, California's anti-SLAPP statute. That's the law Jay's lawyers used to nuke the case. SLAPP stand for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. It's designed to protect people from frivolous lawsuits meant to silence them. But here's the ironic part. Jay-Z, a public figure with billions in resources, used an anti-silencing law against a man who claims has been silenced. The legal jiu-jitsu is unreal. And Hov's team thought nobody would notice the contradiction? That's embarrassing. That's the kind of move that wins a courtroom but loses the court of public opinion. Look at the dollar figure, $119,235.45 in attorney fees awarded against Lily Coley. That's an oddly specific number. Why? Because it's calculated billable hours from elite California attorneys. Jay literally spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees to avoid a $40 paternity test. Pattern forensics. Hov has spent more on lawyers in this case than the test would cost 1 million times over. And opposition, meaning Jay's legal team, really thought that optic was a win? Nah. Brew. That's a DISS disguised as victory. One more decode. Judge Garnett's exact ruling language said without leave to amend. That phrase is a legal nuclear option. It doesn't just dismiss, it prevents rewriting. That means Jay's team didn't just want to win. They wanted Rymir's filing methodology buried. The aggression in that legal request shows fear, not confidence. If Hall was truly innocent and unbothered, why fight that hard to make sure a refile is impossible? Now let's see how the media covered this. Different outlets framed the story in wildly different ways. Pay attention to who's spinning what. Page 6 framed it as a clean, decisive win for Jay-Z, leading with dismiss with prejudice and emphasizing that Hall consistently denied the allegations. They positioned it as case closed, mogul vindicated. Real corporate spin. Remember those filings we covered? Page 6 conveniently downplayed the fact that the dismissal happened on procedural grounds, not on the merit of the DNA question itself. News went a different direction, focusing on the legal mechanism, California's anti-SLAPP statute, and gave more airtime to Rymir's chestnut checkers quote. Their framing left the door open. They didn't crown Jay the winner. They presented it like a battle, not a war. That's more honest journalism. The griot went harder for Rymir's side. They emphasized the scorched earth language and framed Jay's response team as bullying a man with no resources. They treated the dismissal as a technical victory, not a moral one. Big difference. Then all hip-hop dropped the most damaging framing of all. They reported the bankruptcy angle, the $25,000 home sale in, and the property put at risk. That made Jay look like Goliath crushing David. The mainstream outlets gloss over the godmother losing her home part, because that doesn't fit their mogul wins narrative. Hot 97 reported on the $120,000 judgment with neutral framing, noting that Satterthwaite has repeatedly sought court intervention to compel DNA testing, framing his pursuit as a search for closure rather than money. That's the most fair take of all, acknowledging Rymir's stated motive. Now some people are saying this dismissal proves Jay-Z isn't Rymir's father. Here's why that doesn't hold up. None of the rulings address paternity itself. They address jurisdiction, filing methodology, and anti-SLAPP protections. Not one court said DNA test taken, results negative. Some Jay-Z fans are saying this is cap, but those are the same people who thought Hall walked away clean from the Tony Busby mess too. The media trying to spin this as vindication for Hall. But the receipts don't lie. The DNA question was never answered. That's a fact. But here's what nobody is saying. The mainstream narrative is Jay-Z won. Case closed. Move on. The billionaire mogul is too smart, too powerful, and too well-lawyed to be touched. Here's what they won't tell you. This whole case isn't about whether Rymir isn't Jay's son. It's about something way bigger, the question of whether ultra-wealthy public figures can use a legal system to avoid accountability indefinitely. And that's the angle the industry is terrified to discuss. Think about it. We're talking about industry politics at the highest level. Rock Nation isn't just a company. It's a power broker that touches the NFL, the NBA, Apple Music, the Super Bowl halftime show. Hov sits at tables where presidents, billionaires, and league owners shake hands. So when a regular dude from New Jersey walks into court asking for a simple cotton swab, and the system spends 3 states, 10 years, and hundreds of thousands of dollars saying no, that's not justice. That's gatekeeping disguised as legal procedure. That filing we mentioned about exploited legal systems in multiple jurisdictions. Here's the real reason that phrase scared Jay's team. Because if anti-SLAPP can be used by a billionaire to shut down a 30-year-old asking for DNA, what's stopping every other powerful figure from doing the same thing? This case sets a precedent. And the industry doesn't want that conversation in the streets, because Jay isn't the only mogul with rumors swirling. Hall is a puppet in this scenario, not because he's weak, but because the legal blueprint he just established protects all his peers from similar accusations. They are celebrating with him in private. That chestnut checkers line, it's actually about something deeper. Rymir is signaling to the public that the legal route is rigged. He's communicating that the next phase of this fight isn't in a courtroom, it's in the court of public opinion. And that's where Jay loses every time. We've seen this playbook before with Bill Cosby, with R. Kelly, with Diddy. The legal system can stall, but the culture eventually catches up. Hall is repeating the same mistakes that ended other careers. He's betting on procedural wins while public sentiment shifts underneath him. The OLD God playbook. And the culture is done with that playbook. Here's where the historical pattern hits hardest. Hall spent 2 decades building an image as the ultimate family man, the Beyoncé husband, the Blue Ivy dad, the Rumi and Sir Twin Flex. But that image is doing the heavy lifting his actual behavior can't support. He's been allegedly denying Rymir for over a decade while posting all-American family moments. That's not just hypocrisy, that's manufactured authenticity. Hov is rewriting history in real time, and his real story isn't as clean as the marketing. The "I'm not the father" route requires one thing: take the test. He won't. And until he does, the cloud doesn't move. This is psychological warfare at its finest. Jay is playing checkers, burning legal fees, getting procedural wins, declaring victory in press releases. Rymir is playing chess, sitting back, letting the dismissal news cycle die, and watching the public quietly side with him because they see a man who never wanted money, just a name. Every move Hov makes is predictable. Spend lawyers, demand sanctions, get the godmother held in contempt, bankrupt them. But guess what? Every one of those moves makes Hov look worse in the streets. He's winning battles and losing the war. He's already lost. And let's get to the cultural impact angle, because this is the part that haunts him. Hip-hop has always loved the underdog. Rymir is the underdog. A 30-year-old working-class kid with his own children, with no money, with his mother dead, going against the biggest mogul in the genre, and refusing to back down for 10 years. That's a hip-hop story. That's Pac. That's big. That's Meek Mill versus the system. Whether Rymir's claim is true or not, his resilience is hip-hop gospel. And Jay-Z, the guy who built his empire claiming he understood the streets, is now on the wrong side of that story. He's the empire. He's the establishment. He represents the old god the culture is done with. And that's the truth they won't tell you. So what happens next? Here's what's most likely to happen. Rymir is going to refile in a different legal lane. Even though the specific lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice, the chestnut checkers line was a telegraph. He's going to pivot. Maybe a defamation angle, maybe a tortious interference claim, maybe a public petition. Watch what happens when the next interview drops. When that happens, Jay's gonna look desperate all over again, screaming harassment from $1 billion penthouse while a regular dude with 3 kids keeps showing up. The silence between filings is gonna hurt Hall more than any diss track. The public eats this kind of story for breakfast. Meanwhile, expect Lily Coley to become a media figure. The godmother angle is gold for podcasters. Joe Budden, Vlad, Charlemagne. Somebody's gonna give her the seat, the MIC, and the platform. And once she starts naming dates and producing the lane paperwork from her foreclosure, mark my words, the public sympathy tidal wave is incoming. Jay-Z's PR team isn't ready for what's coming. Now, if the alternative happens, meaning Rymir actually does walk away forever, Hov still loses. Why? Because a lawsuit being dismissed without a DNA test means the question never goes away. Every interview Jay does for the rest of his life, somebody's gonna whisper, but did he take the test? Every Beyoncé tour stop, every Rock Nation event, every Super Bowl appearance, the cloud follows him. We saw what unanswered allegations did to Diddy. Hov is not ready for what comes if he takes this seriously, but is also not ready for what comes if he doesn't. He's in a no-win position, and his legal team's strategy guarantees that the question outlives him. Now, if I had to bet, Rymir's gonna drop more interview content, build his personal brand around the cause, and turn into an indie music figure with a built-in story. Imagine the documentary deal coming. Imagine the Netflix pitch. Imagine the book. Hov is watching the culture move on without him, and there's nothing he can do about it. Looking at the bigger picture, this is going to be a watershed moment for how the industry handled paternity allegations. Other moguls are watching. Other women are watching. Other kids out there with whispers about who their father might be are watching. This isn't just a Jay-Z story anymore. It's a template. And Hov's legacy is going to catch the splash damage either way. 5 years from now, people will look back at this as a moment Hov's I'm untouchable mythology cracked. Not because he lost, but because he won the wrong way. The long-term cultural consequence is this. The next generation of hip-hop fans isn't looking at Hov the same way. Gen Z and Gen Alpha rappers grew up watching the story marinate in TikTok comments. To them, Jay-Z isn't the GOAT. He's a guy who allegedly avoided a DNA test for 10 years. That's the story attached to his name forever. The streams will keep coming. The Forbes list will keep listing him. But the cultural capital? That's a different ledger. He's leaking equity in slow motion. He represents the OLD god of the culture is done with, and his desperate dismissal celebrations only confirm what the streets already feel. Mark my words, the next chapter in this saga is gonna come from an unexpected angle. Maybe a long-lost relative speaks up. Maybe Coley files in a different court despite the dismissal. Maybe a Rock Nation insider leaks an old email. Whatever it is, the story isn't closed. It's intermission. Hov is in his palace counting trophies, and Rymir is in his living room with his kids planning the next move. Whatever happens, one thing's clear. Hov already lost a part that mattered. The public's belief that he had nothing to hide. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss when we expose what everyone else is too scared to say. Ring that bell for notifications. And if you want more truth bombs like this, click on one of these videos next. Trust me, you'll want to see what we found.